The flickering holographic display in the center of the Galactic Council chamber cast long, wavering shadows across the faces of the assembled delegates. On it, a single impossibly small vessel was depicted, a speck of durasteel and ceramite against the vast, hungry blackness of the verge. Around it, the icons representing the Zarnith dreadnoughts pulsed a hostile, angry red. It was a formation that had cowed entire systems, a mobile fortress of unimaginable power. And this lone human ship, a frigate designated TNS Last Stand, was moving directly into its heart. Counselor Thrax of the Velour, a being of immense psychic sensitivity, shivered, his gelatinous form trembling. "It is madness," he pulsed, his thoughts projecting into the minds of all present. "They are a species obsessed with glory, with honor in battle. This human, Captain Orion, seeks to become a legend. He will die, and his crew with him, for a story to be sung by his people." A murmur of agreement rippled through the chamber. The Krogan ambassador, a hulking reptile clad in battle-scarred armor, grunted in approval. "Prestige is the fuel of warriors. A glorious death is the ultimate prize. The human fights for his name to be etched in the halls of his ancestors." Only the Aethel, an ancient crystalline entity who served as the Council's historian and observer, remained silent. Its internal light pulsed with a slow, rhythmic beat, its focus entirely on the data stream from the edge of known space. On the bridge of the Last Stand, there was no talk of glory. There was no poetry, no grand speeches. The air was thick with the scent of recycled oxygen and the low, focused hum of machinery. Captain Elias Orion stood at the center, a man whose face was a roadmap of service, etched with the fine lines of countless near-impossible decisions. His eyes, a calm, steady gray, were fixed not on the vast, terrifying armada before him, but on a single secondary screen. It displayed a list: Outpost Beta 7, Personnel Manifest. Civilian Engineers, 47. Medical Staff, 12. Research Scientists, 8. Dependents, children under 12, 23. Total non-combatants, 90. That was the sum total of his reality. Not a legacy, not a place in history. 90 lives. 90 reasons why he was here, flying his ship straight into the mouth of hell. The Zarnith were a species that understood power. They communicated through displays of overwhelming force. Their ships were not just vessels, they were statements, covered in the scarred hull plating of 1,000 conquered worlds. Their commander, War Master Vakor, watched the approach of the human frigate with a mixture of contempt and mild curiosity. To him, this was a bizarre, suicidal ritual. The prey, in its final moments, turning to face the hunter, a flicker of spirit before the inevitable. "Open a channel," Vakor rumbled, his voice a guttural growl that was translated by the ship's AI. "Let us witness the human's final boast." On the Last Stand's bridge, the communication screen flared to life. Vakor's visage filled it, a horrifying amalgamation of chitin and flesh, multiple mandibles clicking in what passed for amusement. "Little ship," he began, his voice dripping with condescending power. "You come to offer your life for the glory of your kind? It is a small but acceptable tribute." Captain Orion didn't flinch. He didn't posture. He didn't offer a witty retort or a declaration of defiance. He looked at the alien warlord with the same flat, analytical expression he might give a malfunctioning piece of equipment. He simply stated a fact. "War Master, my designation is Captain Elias Orion, commanding the Terran naval vessel Last Stand. You are currently on an intercept course with Terran Union Outpost Beta 7. That outpost contains 90 non-combatant personnel. Your fleet's current trajectory will bring you within weapons range of that outpost in 47 minutes. This is an act of aggression against sovereign Terran space and its civilian population." Vakor's mandibles clicked in a gesture of disbelief. "You state the obvious, human. What of it?" "This," Orion continued, his voice unwavering, "is a formal request for you to alter your course and withdraw your fleet from Terran space. You have 5 minutes to comply. A wave of what might have been laughter, a series of harsh, scraping clicks, emanated from the Zarnith commander and his bridge crew. "And if we do not, little captain, what will your single ship do?" Orion looked directly into the alien's multitude of eyes. "I will be required to stop you." The channel was cut. Back on the Galactic Council, Thrax recoiled. "Did you hear that? The sheer arrogance! He speaks of requirements, not of battle. He is delusional." The Krogan ambassador slammed a heavy fist on his console. "He has challenged them! This is good! Let us see if a human can die with as much honor as a Krogan." But the Aethel's light pulsed faster. It was analyzing the tone, the micro-expressions, the choice of words. There was no thrill in the human's voice, no fear, no bravado, just a chilling professional certainty, like a doctor informing a patient of a necessary but unpleasant procedure. The human wasn't fighting for prestige. He was fighting because the alternative, letting 90 people die, was simply unacceptable. It was a requirement of his own internal code. The 5 minutes passed with agonizing slowness on the last stand. "Captain," his first officer, Commander Lena Petrova, reported from the tactical station. Her voice was tight, but her hands were steady on the controls. "They are powering weapons. No change in course." Orion nodded, a small, almost imperceptible movement. He hadn't expected them to. "All right, Lena, you know the drill. Execute Operation Night Sky." "Aye, Captain." This was not a battle plan any other species would conceive. It wasn't designed to outgun the enemy, to outmaneuver them in a grand space ballet. It was a plan born of desperation and cold, hard logic, designed by human engineers who knew their ships were outclassed, but refused to build them without a fighting chance. The last stand lurched, not forward, but hard to port, its maneuvering thrusters flaring at maximum, unsafe output. It wasn't a tactical maneuver, it was a violent, wrenching dodge. A searing lance of plasma, bright as a newborn star, slashed through the space where the frigate had been a second before. The Zarnith fleet, anticipating a head-on charge, was momentarily thrown. Their weapons, designed for optimal tracking on predictable, aggressive attack vectors, had to recalibrate. In that sliver of a second, the last stand completed its erratic spin and fired. But not at the lead dreadnought. Its primary cannons, laughably small compared to the Zarnith behemoths, unleashed a salvo at a point in empty space between two of the smaller escort vessels. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then, the universe itself seemed to tear. The projectiles weren't simple warheads, they were gravity lacerators, a human invention that the rest of the galaxy had dismissed as a foolish, impractical toy. They created tiny, intensely focused and short-lived singularities. They were useless against a ship's main armor, but against another singularity? They were devastating. The two Zarnith escort ships, in their rigid formation, were maintaining a precise distance. A distance that, unknown to them, fell within the overlapping fields of their own powerful gravity drives. The human salvo detonated in the exact center of that overlapping field. The artificial singularities from the lacerators interacted with the drive fields, creating a cascading resonance. It was like striking a crystal glass at its exact resonant frequency. The two escort ships didn't explode, they twisted. Their hulls, designed to withstand external pressure, were suddenly subjected to a chaotic, multi-directional gravitational shear from within their own propulsion systems. Metal screamed, tore, and folded in on itself. In seconds, the two proud warships were reduced to spinning, unrecognizable wreckage. A stunned silence fell over both the Zarnith fleet and the Galactic Council chamber. What just happened?" stammered a delegate from a minor avian race. The Aethel's voice, for the first time, echoed in their minds. It was a sound like chimes in a gentle wind. "He did not fight their strength. He exploited a vulnerability in their formation, a flaw born of their doctrine. He did not seek to destroy them in a fair fight. He sought to neutralize them as a threat. The method is elegant. The Corps' confusion turned to incandescent rage. This was not how war was waged. This was trickery, deception. It was the act of a coward, not a warrior. He roared orders, his fleet beginning to break its perfect formation, moving to swat this insolent insect. And that was exactly what Orion had counted on. "Enemy fleet is dispersing, Captain," Petrova reported, a grim smile touching her lips for the first time. "They're coming for us." "Good," Orion said, his gaze still on the manifest of Outpost Beta 7. "Break their formation, make them individuals, then they're just big targets." What followed was not a battle. It was a hunt, and the last stand was not the prey. The human frigate, designed with a maneuverability that bordered on the suicidal for its crew, twisted and turned through the disoriented Zarnith fleet. G-forces that would have liquefied a Velour or shattered a Krogan were countered by the ship's internal inertial dampeners and the crew's brutal augmentation. They were strapped into their chairs, bodies racked with stress, but their minds remained clear, focused on the task. Orion didn't target the dreadnoughts. He targeted the ships that were out of position, a cruiser that had overextended to chase them, a destroyer whose shields were misaligned after a hard turn. He'd fire a salvo, not of his main guns, but of missiles. These weren't simple explosives either. They were scythes, smart munitions that didn't aim for the thickest armor. They sought out sensor arrays, communication dishes, weapon emplacements. They didn't destroy the ship, they blinded it, muzzled it, crippled it. One by one, the mighty Zarnith warships began to fall silent, not destroyed, but neutralized. Drifting hulks, powerless and blind. The Zarnith warriors, bred for millennia for face-to-face glorious combat, were terrified. They couldn't fight what they couldn't see, couldn't predict. Their enemy was a ghost, a phantom that struck from their blind spots and vanished into the void. On the bridge of his dreadnought, War Master Vakor watched his fleet being systematically dismantled. His rage had curdled into a cold, unfamiliar dread. This human wasn't fighting for a saga, he was solving a problem, and Vakor's fleet was the problem. "All ships, regroup on me, now!" he bellowed, trying to restore some order. The remaining vessels, 8 out of the original 12, limped back towards the massive dreadnought, their formations ragged, their confidence shattered. And in that moment of consolidation, the last stand made its final and most audacious move. It stopped running. It appeared directly in front of the dreadnought, a tiny fly before a giant. Vakor's mandibles clicked in savage triumph. "The coward shows his face at last! Fire all batteries! Vaporize him!" But the last stand had already fired. Not at the dreadnought, but at the space all around it. This time, the projectiles were not lacerators or scythes. They were simply canisters, hundreds of them. They burst open, releasing a cloud of finely milled, super-dense metallic dust. It spread rapidly, engulfing the dreadnought and the gathering remnants of its fleet in a glittering, nebulous shroud. The Zarnith weapons fire never reached the last stand. The moment the plasma bolts and particle beams entered the cloud, they interacted with the metallic particles, creating a dazzling, coruscating light show. The energy was diffused, scattered, absorbed. The last stand, sitting at the edge of the cloud, was untouched. Inside the cloud, the Zarnith ships were blind and helpless. Their sensors were useless, confused by the millions of false returns. Their communications were scrambled. They were isolated, each in its own private, glittering prison. The Corps screamed in frustration, slamming his powerful claws against his command console. "This is not battle! This is butchery! Face me, human! Fight me like a warrior!" A channel opened. Orion's face appeared, calm and unmarked by the strain of the past hour. He looked tired, but there was a profound sense of relief in his eyes. He looked past Vakor at something on his own screen. "War Master," Orion said, his voice quiet, "I have no interest in fighting you. My objective has been achieved." He gestured to his secondary screen. On it, a new set of icons appeared. Larger, faster, more powerful. 10 of them, The Terran Union's Rapid Response Fleet had just dropped out of FTL at the edge of the system. They had been en route to Outpost Beta 7 the moment the last stand had first engaged. "My only requirement," Orion continued, "was to delay you long enough for reinforcements to arrive. That requirement has been met. You are now surrounded, your fleet is crippled, and you are within weapons range of an entire battle group. You have no tactical advantage. I suggest you surrender." Vakor stared at the human, his multiple eyes wide with a dawning, horrifying understanding. It had never been about the fight. It had never been about glory or honor or prestige. The human hadn't cared about any of that. The human had simply had a job to do, a requirement to fulfill, and he had done it with a chilling, terrifying efficiency, using whatever tools were at his disposal. The human had won not by being the better warrior, but by being the more effective problem solver. Back in the council chamber, the silence was absolute. The holographic display showed the Zarnith dreadnought, its weapon systems powered down, its warp cores spooling into standby mode. Surrender. Counselor Thrax's form quivered, not with fear now, but with a profound, species-altering revelation. "They do not fight for glory," he pulsed, his thoughts echoing in the stunned minds of every delegate. "They fight because it is required. It is a burden, a duty, and they will move stars and shatter fleets to see it done. What manner of species have we allowed into the galaxy?" The Krogan ambassador was silent, his concept of honorable combat shattered as thoroughly as the Zarnith escorts. He stared at the image of the small, battered frigate, now being escorted by the massive Terran battle group. It looked so insignificant, yet it had just done the impossible. On the bridge of the last stand, Captain Elias Orion finally allowed himself a small sigh. He looked again at the manifest on his screen. 90 names, 90 lives. "Lena," he said, his voice soft, "get me a secure channel to Outpost Beta 7. Let them know the threat has been neutralized. They're safe." Commander Petrova nodded, a genuine, warm smile finally breaking through her professional demeanor. "Aye, Captain." As she worked, Orion leaned back in his command chair, the adrenaline finally beginning to fade, leaving a bone-deep weariness in its wake. He didn't think of the battle, of the ships he'd crippled, of the legend that would undoubtedly be woven around this day. He thought of the children on that outpost. He hoped they'd slept through it. He hoped they'd never have to know how close they'd come. Outside the viewport, the Terran battle group moved into formation, a wall of steel and light between the crippled Zarnith fleet and the tiny, vulnerable outpost. And in the cold, dark vastness of space, the last stand simply drifted, its job done, its requirement fulfilled. It hadn't battled for prestige, it had battled because it was required. And for humanity, that was the only reason that had ever mattered.